Okay, so this is the Amendment 3 training that we're going to go over today. It's going to be a little different than the other trainings, as I'm not going to go over the whole protocol again. You all have been trained on it. This will be the third time, so maybe fourth, I think, actually. So we'll just go over the things that are going to be changed, and then other things that Janetta and I have discussed. So the changes to the protocol. First, to the inclusion exclusion, we'll be clarifying that it will be adults over the age of 21 will be included. So in the study population before, it said between 21 and 65. Now it's just 21 and over. So that should be actually say 21 and over. So that'll be in the inclusion now as well. So, and we'll also be adding the CKD epi as the specific formula to calculate GFR. We'll be adding active gastrointestinal bleeding as an exclusion criteria. This is defined as hematemesis or melena with a decrease in hemoglobin more than 2 in 24 hours due to gastrointestinal bleeding, or with a decrease in mean arterial blood pressure less than 65. We'll also be adding a clarifying sentence to the exclusion of 8. The exclusion is like history of Hep C, yada, yada, yada. So we'll be clarifying it, saying that previously treated Hep C that was cured sustained virological response with the negative RNA greater or equal than 24 weeks following the treatment is not an exclusion. So if they've treated Hep C, they will not be excluded. Also in the inclusion exclusion, we are changing the platelet cutoff. So this will also be holding as well, from 50,000 to 40,000. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Other protocol changes. We're adding another asterisk to the table of events for COVID, saying that we're lessening the restrictions if applicable or necessary, such as allowing wider windows on days 14, 28, and 60 to plus or minus 10 days. And we'll also be allowing lessening the protocol mandated in-person study visits with one or more of the following: phone calls, telemedicine, virtual visits, or implement of digital technology to report responses to questionnaires. Lastly, allowing blood draws at remote or commercial laboratories if applicable. Then on page 70 in the protocol under the SAEs, we're adding a clarifying statement saying that SAEs like AKI, GI bleeding, infections, etc. can be both expected and common. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Two other changes that we're working on right now that I haven't mentioned previously are that we're removing the antibody testing from the event table. We're planning on keeping the trough level testing in the protocol. Those will be done as of now at the end of the study by Dr. Szabo's lab at UMass. So there won't be nothing extra you'll have to do as of now. If there's any updates on that, I will let you know. We're also adding DNA consent to the informed consent. So in the observational trial, we ask if it's okay to have DNA or not, and we don't have that in the RCT protocol, so we'll be adding that as well.
Hi, Savannah, this is Jacqueline from BIDMC. Sorry, I just wanted to, a small but important correction. So the antibody, or not the antibody, but the anakin or trough levels will actually be done at BIDMC.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
At UMass. Sorry, I just didn't want the UMass team to think that they were going to be saddled.
Okay, yeah. Okay, with Dr. Szabo's team, yes, at BI.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
No, thank you. Does anyone have any questions about any of those protocol changes? I know we've kind of gone over them before. And lastly, I wanted to note that patients that are coming in for visits should be reminded to not take their medication that day and to wait to take it after. the visit or during or after the blood samples are collected, because we'll be doing those trough levels. So they'll need to not have taken their medicine that day. And any questions for me for the protocol amendments? If not, Janetta, or we'll get started on her updates.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So just a few reminders as Andrew took over Jacob's role of training and interacting with the sites. I know it's been a little bit bumpy. I apologize, but I just want to bring up a few things that came up as we were as he was working with the sites, and we just want to remind you of a few elements in the REDCap database that are important. So some of them, I think the first slide pertains to the observational study. Can I scroll through, Savannah, or will I?
Nope, I'll go for you.
Okay. So the first one that's really important, and I know is the fact that we have to enter every subject 3 times in between the 2 databases. And we've been looking at options to change this, to make it just once and automate the process. We're still looking. We hit some dead ends, but I just wanted to let you know we're aware how painful this is, but we have no choice for now. So one time you will have to enter in the screening database, which you've all have done that so far. Great, thank you. And when the participant is entering the screening database, you probably all noticed that there is an email trigger to the entire consortium to alert them that there is a new participant, and the PIs care a lot about enrollment. So that is a very important element. I just wanted to emphasize that. If a subject comes back from re-enrollment for the observational study, we created a place in the screening database where you can enter the prior ID. And of course, you will assign a new study ID to the participant, but it's important to also capture the prior ID because for analysis purposes and also for the biorepository, we want to make sure we can link the samples of participants with different IDs, but actually there's the same participant. So it's also important that you complete in REDCap the first round of data collection. So if participant X came once, and make sure you have an end of study form before you re-enroll the person and start all over again. So we can go to the next slide. Just, I don't know if we've ever gone through this, but just why? Is there a question? Okay, just wanting to point out where you would have a place in the screening database to enter the previous ID number. So if you're on a video call, you can see it. If not, you will notice that when you open the screening, there's a checkbox, previously enrolled, and enter the previously ID number. So that's something I wanted to mention as you are re-enrolling in the observational study now. So are there any questions about this? Okay, we can.
Hey, Janetta,
Yeah.
It's Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Sorry, and maybe everybody else kind of knows this, but when you mean re-enrolled, like, were they screen failed and then enrolled again, or they were enrolled in the screening part and now they're in an arm of the observational study? I don't know what that means exactly.
Well, a participant is allowed to enroll, I believe, up to 4 times in the observational study. They have to complete the first round of enrollment, and then I can't remember, Savannah, how long does it have to be?
Don't quote me, but I think it's after 24 weeks, I think you can be re-enrolled with a new onset of alcoholic hepatitis.
Right. Or we could have, or we could have heavy drinkers that are developing alcoholic hepatitis, and right. So now they become a new participant. They could if they want to. So I know it's a bit different than most studies we have, but that is a possibility, and we've had that in the past. I believe in TREAT study.
So when you enter their subject ID, I guess I'm just wondering for like monitoring purposes, you enter their subject ID that they were previously enrolled with? And is that the ID number that they keep, or do they get a new one assigned to them?
They get a new one, but we would like,
Oh.
So from our perspective, it looks like the enrollment is up by one, and we'll treat them as a completely different subject, right? They go through same visits and everything, but for biorepository, we need to know if it's one and the same person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, don't be sorry. It's been confusing for most of us. I mean, I totally get it. So as long as the people running the trial are not confused, the coordinators, that's all that matters to me. So, okay. So the second place where we have to enter the participants, and again, most of you have gone through this, is the main study database. And it's unusual. If you've worked with REDCap enough, you typically don't have to do that. You enter it once and it propagates throughout the study. But the way this one was set up, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why it was set up that way, you will have to enter it twice. But what's really, really important, especially for the clinical trial, that you always enter it in arm one. Because the randomization for the clinical trial is done online. The pharmacy is not allowed to enter any subjects. When the pharmacist goes online, they select from a list of subjects, and unless you enter that subject in the enrollment in arm one in subject profile, they cannot see it there, and they cannot randomize the person. So this is where it's really, really important. And then after you enter the person in arm one, which kind of contains the data that would pertain to both observational and clinical trial, right? It's just demographics and death and pregnancy information. Then you would have to go and enter the subject one more time to the arm that you are working on. So we can go to the next slide. So this is the arm one. Everybody knows it. I know there are some questions on how to add a new subject. There was some confusion. You always use what's on the left side, the record status dashboard or the edit records. I personally prefer to use the record status dashboard to see the records and just, I can see the person in the list if he or she is there, or add the number and click create and add one. But arm one is really critical. So are there any questions about this? All right, we can move on. I just wanted to emphasize that we cannot randomize without arm one. Another question that came up as people are going through the training packages, which I know there are, they have some errors in them. I've seen those emails. We're working on correcting them. I apologize. Are about the RCT screening and day zero visits. Where do we enter data if they're done at the same time? So for us, you know, for the purpose of analysis, we use the day zero. And of course we can, so we prefer that the data would be entered day zero for the overlapping assessment. So we have, right, physical examination, vital signs, CONMEDs, the TLFP test assessment, the liver biopsy and labs. If they happen, if screening and day zero are the same, we would prefer that you enter them in day zero. Now, if you enter them in screening, that's no problem. We can manipulate the data behind the scenes. However, there are assessments that are done, they are required only for screening. So those would have to be entered in screening. And there are assessments required for day zero. So we want to make sure you're not missing these. When you look at the REDCap dashboard, you should have data in both ultimately. Because some of them have a space in REDCap, just in screening, in the screening event, and some have a space just in the day zero event. Does that make sense? I think I saw this morning a question if we could create a form, PDF form for day zero and screening being done at the same day. I think we can. I don't see why not. We'll just have to make sure we combine the two and do that if so you can use that one and you don't miss anything. Because I know there's a lot of paperwork and it's very easy to, you know, be overwhelmed with how much paperwork there is to fill out. Are there any questions about this? Okay. Email us if you have questions, please. We have been enrolling the clinical trial now for a month. If you remember, we have to submit monthly regulatory reporting for the clinical trial. And so again, we don't like to do this, but we have to put a little bit of pressure to see the data in the database because this is how we will be reporting. We're using the database to submit these monthly reports. And so we will need, of course, to describe the subject. So that's where we're looking for the ARM1 subject profile data for the demographics and if there is a death form and everything like that. So that's very important again. The ARM1 data to be entered, the demographics. The day 0 visit, we'll be using some labs from there and the MELD score that's used for randomization. There's high interest in the infections for this reporting and adverse events and serious adverse events. And of course, the liver scores and as we move throughout the trial about the treatment. So these elements are really important. I know data entry is overwhelming, but if you can prioritize and make sure you enter these before anything else, that would be very, very helpful for us so we can move along with the reporting to the regulatory agencies. So it's the demographics, the day 0 visit, infections, adverse events, liver scores, and treatment. These are really, really critical for reporting. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. We had some questions about the liver score calculations. We just realized that we made a mistake in the forms and had actually the Lyle score at other visits than day 7. We are working in correcting that and eliminating it from all other visits. And we're gonna have the calculation record just for day 7 as it should have been from the beginning. Just a reminder that all the values, so you will need to use the forms from the labs labs collected at day 0 and day 7. I put here online a snapshot of the web calculator. And as you can see, it doesn't really specify a day 0 very clearly. It's on the top, very small fonts. All values besides a 7-day bilirubin are taken from clinician. But, you know, the purpose of the training is to see if, you know, if you're doing these calculations correctly and if you struggle and you need more training on them because these are really important for analysis. So just remember, please, that these are these. Okay. Are there any questions about this score, in particular this one? And I want to thank you to all of you who brought up to our attention the fact that it was at other visits or some of the things were incorrect. So thank you for working with us in figuring all this out. Okay. The other one was the child score, and we had a question about the encephalopathy because the form PDF file requires the hepatic, but the physical examination has just encephalopathy without the word hepatic. We just wanted to To let you know, you can use the item 10A from the physical examination and the labs in order to calculate the child's score. So we will add the word hepatic there so it's more clear for everybody. Is there anything else that we could answer for you regarding this score? Okay, move on. There is some question about the SOFA score. It's all the elements that are on the PDF file on the data collection correspond one-to-one to the web calculator. So if you have a hard time with that or any questions, just we can work with you. We can have a Zoom call and work with you, but it's literally one-by-one correspondence. So you just have to choose the right. Just enter the data as you have entered on the form, enter it on the web, and the result will pop on the web for you. And I believe that's all we had. Was there anything else, Savannah? That,
No, I don't think so.
are there any questions about these? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Janetta. Of course, remember to please use only the links that are for the scores so that we all have the exact same. They're all on the last page of the study manual of procedures for all the like MELD score, SOFA, all of those links are there to make sure that we're all using the exact same website. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Janetta or I or Andrew. And of course, resources like on the end of every slide. This is how you can get to the box folder, which is you can still access right now, and it still has all the documents that you need in it. And then of course, points of contact. I have here for if you don't have Rachel's or Donna's emails, these are on here now too. Is there anyone have any questions? Okay.